The Death Watch were a terrorist organisation of Mandalorians that seek to take control of their homeworld through violence and manipulation. However, the Clone Wars proved too much for their group, which appeared to have been all but destroyed by the end of the war. But what actually happened to the Death Watch? Now, to start with, we need to understand the Death Watch. They originated as Mandalorian warriors who were exiled to the moon of Concordia after the Mandalorian Civil War, which saw the rise of Duchess Satine and the beginning of an era of pacifism. Now, Clan Vizsla, who ran Concordia, and its leader, Pre Vizsla, decided to get all these warriors together and essentially create the Death Watch. Death Watch's goals are pretty simple: a return to Mandalore's ancient warrior past, to fight and conquer new enemies, and not be threatened by bureaucratic governments such as the Republic or newly emerging CIS. It's sort of the idea of they're strong and they should be allowed to do what they want, as the Mandalorians historically had. Now, as we know, the Death Watch aligns itself with the CIS, and this makes sense because independence is what the Death Watch are really all about. The Death Watch know that it's not a popular belief to want to bring back the warring past. I mean, at the end of the day, it's normal for people who are living peacefully to not want war. So they try to push the Republic to invade, therefore forcing normal Mandalorian citizens to rise up behind the Death Watch and fight back. However, this doesn't work, and the Death Watch are forced to cut ties with Dooku and retreat from Concordia. From here, they met Maul and Savage and go on to be part of the Shadow Collective, and we know what happens from here. Maul kills Vizsla, and this is where the Death Watch begin to break. Majority of them follow tradition and join Maul. Also, people start to refer to them as Super Commandos at this point. However, Bo-Katan and her units of Night Owls make a resistance movement and refuse Maul's leadership. Now, as we know, the Shadow Collective doesn't do very well. They're crushed by Sidious and the CIS, and majority of the Alliance bails on the whole thing, leaving Maul and what remains of his Death Watch back to go to Mandalore, where the Republic do eventually invade in the closing days of the Clone Wars. So they got what they wanted, however it didn't really work out how they planned. Mandalorian citizens who lived under Maul's regime hated it. Maul was in it for self-gain, not helping the people. For this reason, when the Republic did invade, many Mandalorians rallied behind the Republic, not Maul and the Death Watch. We should also note that at some point, Death Watch units do fight against Separatists, where they rescue the child Din Djarin, and they actually have him trained as a Mandalorian. Interestingly enough, it doesn't appear he was trained as Death Watch. We can assume this battle happened before Maul's rise to power due to the blue armor. Also, realistically, Din would have probably died or been raised Imperial if he was taken in by the Death Watch personally. So it's quite possible that the Death Watch who rescued the child then gave him to another Mandalorian clan? Anyway, Maul ends up fleeing Mandalore, and sensing the changing tides following Order 66, Gar Saxon, who is somewhat the leader of the Super Commandos under Maul, and now somewhat the de facto leader of Death Watch, agrees to join Palpatine and becomes the Viceroy of the world. Many Death Watch members did probably join up and follow Saxon, becoming Imperial Super Commandos. Many were probably killed, and some will have fled. Ultimately, the Death Watch became exactly what they were against. A foreign power now controlled Mandalore, and although they succeeded in forcing Mandalorian clans back into combat through resisting the Empire, it's still arguable if they were actually successful. And then, as we know, the Purge happens. Now, the Purge decimates most of the Mandalorian clans and their numbers dwindle, and this is sadly the legacy of the Death Watch. It could be argued that the Death Watch succeeded in its overall goal. The Empire's subjugation of the world forced the Mandalorians to rise up against it and work together, re-adopting much of their warrior past. And for this reason, such a group was no longer warranted. The Death Watch didn't need to exist past this point. However, if we look at where the Mandalorians find themselves at the end of the Galactic Civil War, it clearly didn't work out very well for them. And this makes them a disgraced group who would not be welcomed almost anywhere in the galaxy. But what do you guys think happened to the remaining Death Watch members? And could a group still be out there who was wanting to return to Mandalore's ancient glorious past? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I do hope that you enjoyed. If so, please do remember to like, share and sub, as it's really appreciated and it helps the channel grow. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at TheLoreGuy and tick the bell for regular updates. Thanks again for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.